Hi, all. Welcome to another episode of Saturday Architecture. Should the architects be a solo decision maker or uh, should they be a consensus builder? A lot of times I've seen solo decision makers have been good. What has been your experience?
Few years ago, I was part of a program where we had a new program manager joining the team. Okay, and we used to have deployment every day into QA and every week into staging. And this guy came and then we are going through a very rough patch as a program. And this new program manager came in and said, "No, we will not do multiple deployments per day. We will do only once per week." All of us are belligerent. We said we are going to slow down. The project will never end. Yeah, but when the releases were made small or once a week, we started doing more testing than ever before, and we were spending very little time in deployments and more time in developments. And surprisingly, in another 2 months, our productivity went up like anything. So now, if I still go back and think about it, when he made a decision, every team were belligerent. They said, "This guy is going to slow us down," but we end up making more progress than we did ever before the decision. So what I learned from that is that when you have an experience of executing something, and you know that particular experience is going to make or good for the project, a solo decision maker always helps. Okay, because
Mm,
his decision is not based on his own thought process. His decision is based on his own experience of executing similar things before.
makes sense. And also, I think probably in this scenario that you said, right, it'll be a little hard to for the existing team to think differently because they haven't had that experience. So Deepak, does that mean that solo things will be successful and that's how the tech leader should take?
No, I think it depends on the size of the decision and the context of the decision. And of course, what Varda mentioned about experience. So having experience about a specific uh, execution style or a specific area of technology is equally important in letting the solo decision stand. So specifically, if you are a expert in a specific area where nobody else in the team has the expertise to do what you actually do, your decision has to be respected and adopted, and that's where this is where the responsibility of making the decision and also the accountability also lies with that person. Now, there could be scenarios where consensus is actually required, where you need to make consensus, otherwise things will simply not work. So that context needs to be considered, where small decisions can be really made by individuals, and they can be held both responsible and accountable for those, and larger decision which impact larger the organization. How do you build consensus for that? So one example, this is from the Azure DevOps team, which from Microsoft, which has been doing this. They have developed this whole the way of making decisions. One of the decisions they had to make early on was how long the sprint should be: 1 week, 2 week, 3 week, 4 week. So they went with various choices, and then they came up with a consensus which has worked till today, is that 2 weeks is not good enough for us, 4 weeks is too long. The compromise and the consensus was, let's go with 3 week sprint, and that has been adopted by all the teams within Azure DevOps, and they have a 3 week release cycle now, since ever they decided that. So that still holds. So consensus work that way. Each of these, yeah, it's not, yeah, because each of these groups within Azure DevOps is a big product, and each of them are sort of kings of their domain, and then they need to be able to control the destiny of their domain. So that's it was very important for them to come to this consensus and agree on what will work for the entire product as a whole.
Hearing both, right, we have, there seems to be solo, yes, it needs to happen, it needs to make things move. Consensus, yeah, that also needs to move. Now that puts me under confusion as in architect, as a technical leader. An architect is nothing but a technology leader who leads the team from a technology and business goals perspective. So, having heard both this, Varda, what do you think should be an approach which I, as a leader or a technical leader or architect, should be taking?
I would say, right, I think Kumaran as a leader should work with his team to make a consensus decision. Yeah, it could be a small change or it could be a big change. But once a decision is made, he Kumaran should own the outcome. Either it is successful or it is a failure. So if you put it differently, the solo is not part of decision making. Solo is part of decision ownership. So when you shift that solo from start to the end, okay, it makes it more interesting, and it makes us more successful, because at the end of the day the whole team knows that they are going to work towards the outcome, and they all know that when they fall down, they're not going to be hurt because there's a cushion for them to take care. It's a very important thing that every team will go through.
That's a very interesting way of putting it. I'm responsible for at the end what happens, the outcome, whether it's successful or failure. But the decision, I'll have to take it with the help of the team rather than having my opinion. That's a pretty simple way of putting it. I just realized that it is not something extraordinary that I'm doing. It is a basic quality of a team leader. The romantic thoughts about leader going and people following, I think that's more a romantic idea of leadership. I think the pragmatic view of leadership is taking responsibility for the decision of success or failure and helping reach a decision which will work for others.
I think if you want to put into one simple word, humility of being a leader is very, very important, right? Just they don't really go and show off, and there's no real marketing around it. It's humility that makes a huge difference.
So I think as we are talking, leadership is another role. That's it. It's a role. It's not one human attribute or things like that. An architect or a technology leader is a role that is played. Just like somebody is doing support, somebody is doing sales, somebody is playing the role of a leader.
I think we end up fantasizing the movies we watch, and we relate us to the so-called fantasy to the real world. It's humility as a leader where you work with the team.
It's really interesting where we landed up with. I never quite thought that we would end up this discussion as being a role definition of what leadership is about. But great discussion. I think thanks for joining, Varda.